we are very lucky, you should be able to see my screen now with some words along the lines of groundwater for sustainability, contributions toward the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see clearly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, let me just refer back to the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, we already heard a bit from Professor Lamoureux about this. I'd like to just recall again, the Sustainable Development Goals are a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. And you can see the goals here with these tiles. We work a lot with these in our daily life. We have, in particular, of course, in the top right corner, Sustainable Development Goal 6 on clean water and sanitation. And if we talk about groundwater and the importance of groundwater for sustainability, that is, of course, a central goal. But in fact, groundwater systems are complex. They relate directly or indirectly to the way we live, the way we conduct our economic activities. They relate to climate change, to biodiversity, to consumption and production. They, in a way, relate to all of the goals in different ways. And of course, this is not only groundwater. Water, in a way, flows through all of the Sustainable Development Goals. Without water, there is no life. But there are different kinds of water and different levels of visibility of water. Now, drawing on some statements from the World Water Assessment Program, going back a few years, in fact, we note that sustainable groundwater is a key element in global resilience to climate change. It's a shield against ecosystem loss. It's a defense against human deprivation and poverty. Groundwater underpins irrigated agriculture, energy production. It supports food security and economic development. It is essential to the health of all living things. Groundwater provides drinking water to at least 50% of the global population. 2.5 billion people depend solely on groundwater resources to satisfy their basic daily water needs. So what is the problem? Clearly, groundwater is front and center to the development agenda and to what we should all be concerned about. But as ICRAC pointed out last year, groundwater is a hidden and vulnerable resource. It's not always physically visible. So that can make it difficult for the population at large and for decision makers to connect the challenges that they face with the resource. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in just a moment. Now, we heard already a bit earlier that this year, the World Water Day and the World Water Development Report published by UN Water and prepared by the World Water Assessment Program has the theme groundwater making the invisible visible. So we acknowledge that there is an issue with groundwater. We know it's important, but we can't see it. And that means that it is not given the attention it should. Now, when the World Water Development Report is prepared, it's under a very strict embargo until the 22nd of March, which is the World Water Day when the report is launched. But there are a few statements out on websites around the UN Water and the assessment program along the lines of the messages that we will be hearing on this year's World Water Day. And these are things like groundwater is invisible, but its impact is visible everywhere. Out of sight, under our feet, groundwater is a hidden treasure that enriches our lives. Almost all the liquid fresh water in the world is groundwater. As climate change, the impacts of climate change get more severe, groundwater will become more and more critical. We have to work together to manage this precious resource, and that is something I'll focus on for most of the rest of my presentation. And groundwater may be out of sight, but it must not be out of mind. So that is the focus of this year's World Water Day and World Water Development Report, making the invisible visible. So why is groundwater invisible? Well, it's not just the fact that it is under our feet, as we just heard, but in fact, appreciation of groundwater is rarely taught in elementary schools. Many university programs don't have hydrogeology courses in their undergraduate curriculum. it's not generally known in the population around the world that surface water and groundwater are closely connected. If one is polluted, the other one may follow. Rivers and lakes derive water from the base flow in the underground. And even decision makers may not know that in drylands, even slight changes in groundwater levels due to overpumping and climate change can diminish or eradicate springs and wells. And we have many sad examples of this, of course. Many people don't know that an estimated 20% of the world's aquifers are being overexploited, and I'll get back to that again. Now, these are issues that were raised in an excellent online resource developed by ICRAC last year. In spite of this, if we look through history, groundwater is closely associated with human civilizations all around the world, going back thousands and thousands of years. It's a sacred treasure, it's a prized resource, it's at times a source of conflict. So somewhere along the way, we lost a bit sight of that and need to make the invisible visible once again. So this lack of a systemic communication and data on groundwater is a significant impediment to its sound governance and management. And that, of course, has direct implications on how groundwater contributes to the SDGs. And a case in point here is that of transboundary aquifers. And I will talk a little bit about transboundary aquifers in Asia, and in particular about SDG indicator 652, which talks about the proportion of a transboundary basin area that has an operational arrangement for water cooperation. So how we cooperate between countries on water, and in particular groundwater. And I'm very, very happy that among our participants today is Yunhee Lee, who contributed as one of the authors to the report I'll be quoting from in the next couple of slides. So thank you for that excellent piece of work, Yunhee. Now, in Asia, there are 129 shared aquifers, more than 9 million square kilometers. 38 countries in Asia are identified as having internationally shared aquifer basins. So it's a significant resource in Asia, aquifers straddling international boundaries. But the aquifer stress in the region has increased significantly over the past 50 years in areas like the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the Mekong Delta region as well. And survey of the Transboundary Water Assessment Program identified that 25 transboundary aquifers in South, Southeast, and East Asia, only about 50% of them have water resources that are entirely suitable for human consumption because of serious groundwater quality issues. So we have a significant stress on the resource. Now, transboundary aquifers link hydrological, social, and economic sectors between countries. At the same time, they are under considerable stress. So it would make every sense in the world if they were managed in a way that allowed for cooperation in taking care of that resource. But across much of Asia, these issues are rarely addressed in the joint legislation, cooperative agreements and arrangements, and institutional instruments. And just a few more details on transboundary aquifers, because in Asia, groundwater is a significant resource. Many aquifers are exploited in a vast and significant way. We will see increased population density in some areas, increased economic development. That is expected to further enhance the stress on the aquifers. And there is a risk of increased regional conflict due to competition over limited water resources. There's been a lot of activity to develop better transboundary aquifer inventories to improve our understanding, but we still have a lack of reliable, comprehensive data, in particular in developing countries in the region. And that is due to often a lack of cooperation in the identification, assessment, and governance of the resource. We have a number of initiatives launched to promote legal and institutional frameworks for cooperation. So there are initiatives underway. Several countries have worked together to set up agreements with neighboring countries. So there is progress occurring, but it's still at a relatively early stage. Many countries don't have on their own the capacity to do comprehensive groundwater investigations and set up the most appropriate management practices. So we do need to have this stronger connect between knowledge and practice, and we need to do that through enhanced regional cooperation. So just to sum up this part of the presentation, transboundary aquifers are a crucial water resource in Asia. They play a major role in providing fresh water and sustaining development. Efforts are being made to improve management, but further improvements are required. Those improvements are impeded partly because assessments of resources have not been fully undertaken across the region. There is in many cases lack of expertise and institutional support. General limited understanding of shared aquifer systems, and legal and institutional frameworks are vital. They are underway, but they are rarely or only in a minority of cases in place. Just very briefly on indicator 652, as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, this is part of Clean Water and Sanitation SDG 6 that calls for integrated water resources management at all levels. This is target 6.5. Indicator 652, as I said, talks about the proportion of a basin area within a country that has an operational arrangement for water cooperation. UNESCO and UNECE, the Economic Commission for Europe, work together as custodian agencies for this indicator. And you can see on the right side of the screen, 25 out of 30 countries in Central, East, South, and Southeast Asia share transboundary river and lake basins. Limited data was available, but there is progress. In 2017, only 6 countries had data available. There is now combined data available for 15 countries. So we see an improvement in the sharing and availability of data. There is, however, a significant number of countries where operational arrangements, cooperation is still lacking. Only 6 out of 25 countries have reported operational arrangements that cover 90% or more of the basin area. That does include several of the Mekong River Basin countries, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, as well as Central Asia and Indonesia. I've included, because we are in Thailand today, even if it is virtually, I thought I would just make some reference to the Greater Mekong sub-region and the challenges and efforts at sharing data and cooperation across Cambodia and Vietnam. There is significant stress on the lower Mekong Delta aquifer. Groundwater levels have significantly declined, seawater intrusion, as well as arsenic pollution. There is at the moment a limited institutional framework for the investigation of transboundary aquifers in the lower Mekong. That has to date restricted the strategic planning for cooperation in this part of the region. UNESCO, FAO, many other agencies are working together to develop new projects to help address these challenges. Now, I'm going to end because when I was first asked to speak in today's session, I was asked to speak about Denmark. I am from Denmark, although I haven't lived and worked there for some time. But I was saying, you could say something about groundwater management in Denmark. And although I'm not going to talk about transboundary context here, I did look up from a very capable gentleman with the Danish and Greenland Geological Survey, Bjørn Kåre Jensen, who has put out some very nice slides on the principles for groundwater management in Denmark. So I thought I would round off with those in recognition of that request. So Denmark is a country which is entirely dependent on groundwater for its drinking water supply. And Bjørn Kåre Jensen tried to summarize in a way what are the basic principles that have allowed for the sustainable management of that resource in Denmark. And he stresses very much tradition and history, that there is a long tradition and a recognition of that tradition for groundwater management as the sole drinking water resource. There's a strong knowledge and research base, a very strong national commitment at the highest level. There is a transparent regulatory system, focus on partnerships, and there is a general high level of public and political concern and awareness. So the invisible may be slightly more visible in a country like Denmark, where groundwater is the sole drinking water source. He stressed the 5 M's, and you can see that on the right side, an approach that is an integrated management approach with stressing mapping, measurement, monitoring, modeling as the base elements to allow for the sustainable management of groundwater. So it is maybe an interesting case in that it is a very long history of management that is in some ways maybe a bit conservative because it builds on this very long tradition, but also drawing on the best available science. There are significant challenges in Denmark today that includes contamination from a range of sources. We have a significant agricultural activity with groundwater contamination to follow. There is uneven recharge patterns. So in some cases you have over abstraction and depletion, and we have the impacts of climate change, which are causing significant challenges to groundwater in Denmark. So we have increasing number of extreme events in recent years. So we have groundwater flooding, we have enhanced transport of contaminants, seawater intrusion, saltwater intrusion due to sea level rise, enhanced leakage from sewer systems, drought leading to lowering of the water table, and increased infiltration of rainwater in urban areas, because again we have seen some historically significant flood events, flash flood events, and extreme weather events in the recent decades. So there will be more to come, no doubt of that. And with that, I will thank you very much for your attention. I hope I managed to stay within my time. I took out some slides.